Yeah, I was definitely holding there. I slowly weaned myself off of it.
And now your son's in the army, right?
All my kids are finished with the army. All my kids are married with their own kids, but I have one kid who got I have a son who's I have all my 4 of my 5 kids in the army, including a daughter who was a combat medic and a daughter in the Navy. I had one daughter that did with me, but the one got called back up again, and one son-in-law. So I have one son and one son-in-law in Gaza now as we speak.
Oh, they're in Gaza now.
They're in,
So
yeah.
God should protect them. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Have you heard from them recently?
They take away their phones are turned off when they go in, so they don't. So they just leave you literally a 4-second message. Hi, Dad, I'm okay. Be out of touch. Love you. Bye. Then you don't hear anything for like a week. It's kind of creepy. It's
Right.
not the first time. It's been going on for a long time. I've had kids in the army for a very long time. Yeah.
This is like they seem to be doing it very methodically and carefully this time. Like, thank God, very, very few casualties, God willing.
Yeah, I mean, considering what I don't know how many Ahmeds they've sent to meet their 172-year-old virgin, but hopefully it's more than the 1,000 they're claiming. I was hoping more was like 10,000 of them. Got to exterminate them all, but they have. Who knows? I don't know if we can. I don't know what there's like 35, 40,000 of them. What are they going to trap them all in one place? We should incinerate them all. Be a good death. Just burn them all alive. They're all high of something really bad.
Yeah, but I don't think the world wouldn't really go for incinerating all of Gaza.
Not all of Gaza, just all the Hamas guys.
Though Hamas guys prefer not to cloister together. They prefer to like mix with the general populace so that you have to incinerate all of Gaza if you want to get them.
Yeah, probably. We don't know. Who knows? Anyway, what are we doing?
What are we doing? I guess we're schmoozing.
You have a podcast. Has it been out at all? You put it up already, or
I have a little teeny YouTube channel. Have you seen it?
okay.
I sent you a link to something yesterday.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's your YouTube channel. Okay, so you're putting us on your YouTube channel.
Yeah. This is going to get the least views of all the videos you've ever made in your entire life. Even like private videos that are accidental by like sitting on the camera button. This is going to get fewer views than that one.
I know my last YouTube video is doing good. I got 140,000 views already.
Oh, I watched. You mean the one with the fellow who's
Yeah,
in it?
yeah, former Ashton. Yeah, that one got really good play. Thank God.
Yeah, that was very interesting. So this is going to be a major disappointment. So anything that you want to say that like you need to get off your chest, but like you don't want anybody to watch, this is the place to put it.
No, because then it's out there. It's out there. It's in the cloud. You don't say anything. You never do that. It'll come back to haunt you. Okay, so what are we talking about? Let's just go ahead and do it because it's getting late. I want to eat dinner, so I'm tired.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't mean to catch you while you were
No, I
hungry.
better. I kind of late. I was watching. I was just watching on Fox News the rally in DC.
How many people?
I tried to tell, but it looks like a very good turnout. I mean, Joe Biden. I don't think he knows where he is, but Biden says Gaza hospital must be protected. Shut up! It's full of terrorists, you moron. Okay, anyway, what idiot.
He's got to say what he's got to say.
Such an idiot.
With
Anyway.
so now if you didn't so okay, so obviously with the decision that Israel has, with the leadership that Israel has, I support Israel because whatever, they're doing what they're doing. But I don't think this is really I mean, you and I probably saw this. I saw this whole thing coming a long time ago. It was just obvious, like
Are you recording
it
this
took
now? Or are you just
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
fine.
says it's a little
Okay.
record button.
Yeah, okay, so it started already. Fine, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was like an official start time. How does this work? Like, how do you officially
tell me
start?
when they're starting to it says the recording started. Usually the thing appears and says you're recording. So as long as you
Oh,
think make sure you're recording.
well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with Rabbi Doctor.
Not a
Doctor,
doctor.
right?
My mother wishes I was a doctor.
You have a PhD, don't you?
I do not.
Okay,
One
well,
day.
pretend you do.
Okay, one day I'll get it. Thank God my older brother's a doctor, so that's good enough.
I thought, didn't you do your PhD in Russian lit?
No, I did I have an undergraduate degree from Vassar in Russian language and literature, and I have a master's degree in history.
From Vassar. You went to Vassar. When did you
Yeah,
transition?
it
You're
transitioned
really passing it.
went co-ed before I got there. Went co-ed before I got there.
Huh. Okay, so Rabbi Ken Spiro. Okay, let's start. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to my talk with Rabbi Ken Spiro from Jerusalem. Rabbi Ken Spiro is the author of many books, including Crash Course Jewish History and World Perfect. And all of the other good things you can read on history that are true were written by him. By the way, you are really like probably the first person I'm talking to in years who knows more than me in Jewish history, I would say.
Wow. Okay. That must have something.
Yeah, so like I'm intimidated. So let me ask you this: what year are we in, Jewish wise?
5,784.
Except if you count the
86.
missing years,
Yeah, we're missing 200 years possibly. In which case,
165.
in which case we got a maximum of, yeah, we don't have a lot of time left. 216 years less maximum. Could be, yes, the deliberate obfuscation of the calendar, so you don't figure these things out. But I always say that I don't need, this is all based on the idea that there are 6,000 years from the end of day 6, the completion of human beings, to the end of normative history is a maximum of 6,000 years, and we're very close to the end of that. So I always say I don't need any Jewish sources to tell me this. It's pretty clear from what's going on in the world, and I'm not talking about Greta Thunberg yelling at me that we're destroying the climate. Just by looking at the decay of what is going on in the world in terms of values and clarity, we don't got 200 and plus. We don't got 200 years left, or 216 years left. No way. We're definitely a lot closer than we think, and I think we hit a big inflection point with October 7th, from my perspective. And I'm a big follower and interpreter of what's going on in history and current events.
Yeah, the actual year that we're in, if you add the 165 missing, by the way, in terms of that, Chazal might have been trying to hide the years. They make it pretty evident in the two places where we get the cheshbon of 420. I think it's Nida and Perek HaChelek probably. They say, but mibnei avonos sherabu yotzu mehen masha yotzu. In other words, they're very, very clear about that they changed it because of all of the messianicism of all the kinds, whether it was the Jesus kind, whether it was rebellion against Rome, all the different messianicisms that were going on. We know from Josephus other Jesuses, other Yehoshuas who were crucified. They pushed it off a little bit, like all the rabbis have always done, like Rambam did, and Zigeras, Taman, like all the rabbis have always done, say, Mashiach is coming, but in 60 years, just hold on a little bit in the future. But the actual year that we're at is 5949. Next year is the second to last Yovel. Yom Kippur is the 100.
You're going according to the 164-year difference between the secular calendar.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually it's 422 versus 586 that I worked out. But that I never use, because that just could be because it's the dates used by a secular calendar. Historians are purely educated guesswork. They're hardly written in stone. So that I was going by the comment in the Zohar and Parshat Vayera, the Tikuni Zohar and Parshat Vayera, which is a commentary on the Zohar, which says resurrection of the dead begins no later than 200 years before the 6,000-year deadline. So we're talking about then 16 years is left until, because resurrection of the dead in Judaism is already Olam Haba, which is after the Messianic era. So we got like 16 years left. You should bring Rabbi Pinchas Winston on your show. This is his topic. He loves this stuff.
Oh yeah.
He definitely loves this stuff. But there's all kinds of calculations. I always say those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. But which is the comment? It's in the Zohar. It's in the Zohar. Yeah. It says that the actual date of the coming of the Messiah isn't known, but as it gets close, even a child will be able to make the calculation. So it seems to me that if you look at, and it's also interesting that there's no part of the Mishnah, which is the laws of Messiah or anything like that. It's not clearly stated. Maimonides himself, who gives us the best picture of it, if you look in his book on Shoftim, the law of judges, and he talks about the laws of kings and their wars, he goes into great detail on the Messiah, and he himself says that there's no clear tradition on this. We can just try to base it on what the rabbis say and what it said in the Torah. I always tell people when I'm teaching classes on the end of days and things, if I give you a pad and paper, people still use those things, and I give you a Tanakh, a Hebrew Bible, and you start reading into the books of the prophets, you read like Isaiah and Ezekiel and Zechariah and things, and you just look at the statements inferring what's going to be going on when Messiah is coming, before he's coming, you can come up with the big bullet points, pretty clearly about what we expect to see in terms of, physical return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, spiritual return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, the whole idea of Gog and Magog, that the nations of the world line up to try and stop us. I mean, it's pretty much all in place. The problem is the nature of history is when you're in the middle of it, you don't have the perspective to see what is really going on, but it is clearly quite miraculous. And that's the other issue, was being Jews, even David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, who was very far from religious, even he said, to be a realist as a Jew, you have to believe in miracles. So there's so many things that have happened, like 3 years after the
what do you say?
Holocaust.
Yeah, sorry. We take into account. We don't rely on nes.
Basically, yeah, exactly. Just assuming it's going to be. It's going to have to be, because there's no
Yeah.
normal explanation for you and I having this conversation, being here today. Is not for me sitting in Jerusalem, 3 years after the Holocaust, when a third of the Jews are killed and the state of Israel is established in a desert with no infrastructure, surrounded by, like 45 million Arabs, in a constant state of war and terrorism and economic blockade and no natural resources, and having to absorb, hundreds of thousands of refugees from primarily the Middle East who were ethnically cleansed by the Arabs, their Jewish populations, and everything. It's just so bizarre. But when I always say, when supernatural happens to you every day, it just becomes natural and normal. So we don't realize how amazing it is. The people who see it the best are evangelical Christians.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who really, because they know their Bible, albeit in translation, like pretty well. And they see the fulfillment of prophecy, that everything God said is going to happen. He's going to, gather us from the four corners of the earth and rebuild Jerusalem. Jerusalem's reunified. It's so much of it it's just so beyond the pale of what is normative history. And we're really, it seems to me, Moshe, we're like a couple of headlines away from total convergence of biblical end of days scenario with what's going on in current events, And I always say 9/11 happened to give us a sense of experiencing something. It just doesn't seem real that's happening before our eyes. Planes going into the World Trade Center. This isn't a movie. And October 7th was Israel's mini 9/11, not just in terms of actually it's much bigger in terms of exponentially casualty figures, but it was so surreal. This can't be happening. It's just not. So all the things that we think could never happen are now happening. And even now what's going on, I just came back from South Africa, but the level of fear that Jews are in, that that anti-Semitism in America is up 360% in the last, especially it's shot up through the roof. And things that we, when I was growing up, the only police car we ever saw outside a synagogue was on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to keep for pedestrian crossing, or in the case of being raised reform, it was to let all the cars out of the parking lot. But then we had, then we had Tree of Life, and then you have security, and now it's like, now you have like a level of security around Washington that we're speaking now as rallies going on, which is equivalent to a presidential inauguration. That's how scared people are. So everything's moving fast, and we're in the middle of it. We don't appreciate it. So we could step back, and if we could bring ourselves back in time, like 20 years, and look at today, we'd all be in shock. That's for sure.
Yeah. But, obviously in every generation, people have been making cheshbonos, accountings about claiming that their day is the Messianic era, their day is the end of days. Jesus famously said, what do you need signs for? If you see that it's red at night, it means it's going to rain tomorrow, or whatever it was. I don't really know much about meteorology, but I guess Jesus did. He was Jesus. He's got to know meteorology. That's one of the basics of being a Messiah. So, but I think it's largely up to us. I think, there is an end date, in Yeshaya. So in Yeshaya, it says, you're supposed to, the Yom Kippur Haftorah, right? God wants us to act properly and all that. And then he says, Vayar ki ein ish. And God saw that there is no man, ki ein ish, right? The same thing, what the Rosh Hashiva always talks about, right? Which is the exact same thing that Moshe said. When Moshe, Vayar ki ein ish, right? Moshe looked around and he saw there was nobody. So Vayar ki ein ish, vayishtomim, God was just stunned. Ki ein mafgia, because nobody got involved. Vatosha lo zro'o, and his own arm helped him. V'tzid kaso, he smachasahu, and his righteousness it lent support to his arm. And vayilbash tzedakah kesirion v'chova Yeshua barosho vayilbash bigdei nokam tilboshes vayat k'me'il kina ka'al gemulos ka'al yeshalem, like very, very negative stuff. Like this is the end of days kind of thing. If it's forced. If God has to do it because we don't do it, then uvol etzion goel l'sholei pesha b'Yakov Yahweh. Well, sorry, Hashem. Sometimes it's what it's written. So it seems like it's not a good thing if we have to rely on God to end up, bringing about the end of days. We're supposed to try to bring it, ourselves if we can. And I figured, from doing the math, when I realized this is 5949, that next Yom Kippur is the last Yovel. That if we take the 6,000 year thing seriously, 6,000 years is not in Tanakh, but nonetheless, it's very ancient. then this is the last chance that we have, this Yovel year that we have coming up, starting Yom Kippur, for everybody to not work, but instead to mingle, to get to know each other, to reset society, which is what Yovel is supposed to be. This is like our last chance to do it. And the Israeli war kind of seems like it's forcing us to, we have to. But I don't know how.
Yeah.
So I'm relying on you. I'm putting this
You
on your
brought up a
shoulders.
lot of points. First of all, yes, people say, yeah, people are always saying the Messiah is coming. But if you really look at the prophecies and what's predicted, there's things that have happened recently that never happened before. First of all, the exile followed by a scattering, which was not in the first temple period. It was only in the second temple period. We're not scattered around the world. The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, reestablishment of a state, reunification of Jerusalem. The fact that 0.5% of the Jews in the world lived in Israel in 1900, and now half the Jews in the world live in Israel. We're talking about less than 80 years later. There's a lot of stuff in place that was never, ever in place before. And the fact that less than 80 years after the Holocaust, have a surge in anti-Semitism, the nations of the world lining up against us. So while there's maybe bits and pieces of prophecies that may have come true in the past or could have been interpreted as coming true, there's a combination of things happening now that have never, ever happened at any time before in Jewish history. That's very clear. There's no question about that. And in terms of what you were saying about, what was the other point I wanted to address that you were talking about? Yeah, in terms of there's an idea, I will hasten it, achishena b'ito, I'll bring it in its time. The idea of that one way or another, Mashiach, the redemption has to come. The question is how quickly, how slowly, how painfully, how painlessly. Right. All of human history is an interplay between God's infinite control and knowledge and human free will. And we get to the finish line. The question is at what speed and in what shape we're in when we cross it. So obviously, there's the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Israel Kagan of Radin. He talks about all of human history is it's like a pregnancy, and the end is like the delivery, the contractions, Hevle HaMashiach, which is a concept that's brought down by the rabbis. I don't never talk about women giving birth because we don't do it. I once had a kidney stone. That was the closest thing I ever got to it.
You had a kidney stone?
Yeah, wow. I had a little, but at the end, whereas I have, when my wife would get pregnant, she had beautiful kids. I had a little rock. So that's the only reason why I dare comment on this. But pregnancies can go very quick, relatively quickly. I thank God I had 2 grandchildren in the last 6 weeks. I had one daughter, had her 5th grandchild, it was in 4 hours. She's a pro. And then I had another daughter, had her first kid, and it was like 2 days of labor, and it was a lot harder. So, that difference is decided by us, whether we will step up as a people and do what needs to be done to hasten it, as opposed to in its time. Because if it has to come as the emergency evac helicopter rescue, we could be in very bad shape, whereas we could bring it much, much easier. And it seems to me that clearly, you can hear me saying this online. I've noticed, because I'm a student of history, that one of the things that God has the least patience for us is fighting amongst ourselves. And I've noticed, having lived in Israel for 41 years plus, that all the major external threats, the first and second intifadas in 1987 and in 2000, they were preceded, and other events were preceded by much infighting within the Jewish world and within Israel specifically, to the point where I'm thinking it's pretty clear to me God, so to speak, is sitting up in heaven saying, my children, you want to kill each other, I'll send Goyim to do it. It's going to send non-Jews to do it. And I've been saying this literally because Israel's been tearing itself apart in a way I've never seen it happen, over judicial reform and the left freaking out about their loss of power. I've been saying this for months and months and months, that this is terrible. It's the worst infighting I've ever seen. The country's on the verge of civil war almost. That's how bad it is. It's really bad. And so we're going to get it. I had no idea we were going to get it that bad. But the silver lining, in every cloud is a silver lining in Jewish history, like the silver lining of the Holocaust is, the world doesn't like us as victors, but it loves us as victims. There's a great book called People Love Dead Jews. 6 million Jews dying bought us 3/4 of a century of relative sort of support and guilt, which is all worn off by this point, to enable the world to vote barely to create a Jewish state in 1948. So the shock of losing 1,400 people, and what is the biggest, as we say in Hebrew, fashla, mess up, literally the day after the start of the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. It was like perfect timing, which was the other great Israel caught completely blindsided.
Concepcia.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It's suddenly it was a massive bucket of ice water in the face of Israel. And you have to live here to see how suddenly, not only did everyone stop fighting, which always happens. I've been saying this for years. The only time people stop honking and yelling at each other in this country and waiting patiently in line is when people are trying to kill us. Then we recognize that the people who hate us don't really care what our political affiliation or religious affiliation is. I always say in Auschwitz, there's only one line. So now you see not only this level of everyone's being really like unity, but the level of Avas Yisrael, of Jews loving each other. You see all these videos on YouTube and Instagram, and Haredim, ultra-Orthodox Jews making food and hugging and kissing, and several thousand Haredi guys ran up to try and enlist in the army right away. And all these secular Israeli soldiers, they want tzitzit, and they're putting on tefillin, and they want little books of the Psalms, Tehillim. It's like a beautiful thing to see. So, that's the huge silver lining in this cloud. And hopefully that is what we won't go back to a situation where we're fighting and arguing amongst ourselves afterwards. So let's hope that this was a very painful.
So how do we, though, get to, without God having to force our hand, right? Like, the world is complicated. We're all just human, and getting along with people can be difficult. So how do we actually get ourselves to a place that God wants us to be without his hand being forced to bring us there in a bad way? How do we actually, so to me, I look at the Yom Kippur Haftorah as, Isaiah 58, I think it is, right? As what the goal should be. Is that Isaiah 58? Right? Everybody.
I'm not sure the exact psuk it's in. Yeah. But but it sounds about it.
How do we actually become, how do we actually create our world perfect? How do we actually create our world perfect in real life? I'm saying right now, forget theory. Like, me and you right here, what do we actually do?
Right. So first of all, you point out a very good point that there's ein ish. There's no top down. I've been saying this also forever, that there's no real top down leadership in the Jewish world. There's
right.
halachic leadership, but there's not leadership. Like, people tell me, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this loud, but I say it all the time. I hold there's no Gedolim anymore. Gedolim, Gedolim is, he's a God. Everyone has their own Gedolim. You ask like the Lithuanian yeshiva crowd, they say the Gedolim say, so listen, you're Gedolim. There's, Dati Lumi, religious nationalists have their Gedolim. Hasidim have their Rebbes, Sephardim have their Gedolim. But a Gadol, in my opinion, a great one, is not someone who knows a lot of halacha. And there's definitely people like that who can give you answers to very complicated halachic shilas. A real leader, which is what a gadol really means, is the person who has a vision, clarity of vision, and says what needs to be said, even though he knows no one wants to hear it. And that's what we're not. There's not people standing up. For instance, you see, and I harp on this all the time, that if Israel is in trouble, the responsibility is overwhelmingly on Jews who are observant Jews. And the more observant they are, the greater the responsibility, because they are viewed as the holy people within the holy people. And so I don't hold the secular Israelis or the secular Jews in America and to the same level of accountability as people who know Torah and should know better. So
if you don't mind, I'd like to only leave the Baal Teshuvas responsible, because having grown up from myself, most people who grow up from, it's not a choice. Like the Shiva used to always say about Iraqis and Iranians, so most people who grow up from, you think like, oh, you're shuckling and you're wearing a shtreimel and a bekisha. That's all they know. It's not like they really had an option. But Balei Tshuva, like yourself, you guys are responsible. Right. Because you do know, because you made a choice.
You're 100% right. It's another thing I get in trouble for saying, but I say most Haredi people don't have a shkafa. They've never thought it out. They just do what they do.
Not at all.
You push them, they get very uncomfortable, and they don't know how to answer that. But it seems to me that when we reach a certain threshold, then the leader will show up, who is that Mashiach, Messiah person, who will take us the final lap around. But we have to get to a certain threshold. But what is very clear to me, looking in Israel now, and it's very clear to me what's going on in America with the anti-Semitism, I see a commonality of theme here. I've been saying this over and over, and a lot of religious people get upset with me for saying it, especially the Haredi world. But I say it all the time. I say most Israelis that I know, secular Israelis, are quite interested and quite open to Judaism. They don't have an issue with Judaism; they have an issue with religious Jews.
Absolutely,
in Israel's case, if you don't serve in the army, you're not pulling your weight, you're not serving. You look down on us. You call, you disrespect the army, and you're not welcoming. What you see now with these beautiful barbecues down by Gaza, with all these very religious guys with huge beards hugging and kissing, and you got to watch Rabbi David Grossman of Migdal Or to see what a living, breathing 365, 24/7 Kiddush Hashem can be, and how that person can impact the world. I'm telling you, all it takes is first do no harm. That's the first rule, the Hippocratic Oath. And then just give a little love, smile. Stop yelling at cars outside my building. Shabbos. No Jew ever did tshuva because a guy yelled at his car. You got to be kidding.
Do that outside. They do that in
yes, I call it from virtue signaling. I'm saying people and Israelis, and you see, there's no atheists in the foxholes, like young Israelis, these secular guys with the ponytails and the beards and the piercings. They are so open to Judaism. They're so spiritually searching. Just give a little love. And that's what you see in Israel. So if the religious world would not go back to sleep and really realize that, because they're the ones who have the obligation to know. They're the ones. And in America, you see suddenly, I mean, there's a few Jews who are beyond salvage, like some of these crazy Neturei Karta guys who are marching with our enemies. And there's some extremely left-wing Jews who are like, but most Jews in America are just lost souls. And now suddenly they realize, woo, I was all liberal and progressive and open, and now I'm being attacked for being Jewish, even though I'm not even openly being Jewish. I'm not even, so they're also, I see that there are people who really, what does this mean? Why? So this is a golden opportunity to jump in and proactively, our job is to first get our own act together. And when, 85% of the Jewish world is not connected to Torah, really, in any significant way. But they're open. In Israel, it's more. In Israel is a lot more traditional, like Sephardi Jews who are just very, I always call them Haredi non-observant. Their heart is totally into being, the synagogue they don't go to is Orthodox. They would never think of going to Reform, Reconstructionist, or Boo Jews or anything like that.
The shul they don't go to on Shabbos is Orthodox.
Yeah, exactly. And when they do go, it's always an Orthodox shul when they show up a couple times a year for Yom Kippur or whatever. But I'm saying that the everything to me is being lined up. We've reached a critical point. This is an inflection point in Jewish history for the Jewish people, not just in Israel, but also in the diaspora. It's the explosion of what happened in Israel that it morphed out to immediately the whole world, and a massive explosion of anti-Jewish, anti-Israel.
Let me say, in the diaspora, it's viewed very differently. Like here, so a couple of weeks ago, okay, so I don't know, do you remember me from Aish at all?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I was a really young guy. I was like the youngest guy in Aish when I showed up. So so you shared an office with Shalom Schwartz. So you might recall when I saved the fellow from Chechnya who had been kidnapped. There was a fellow in Chechnya. Right. So the issue of people who are kidnapped and suffering like that, really, really matters to me. So I actually went to some Palestinian rallies and whatnot to see if I could meet people from Gaza, to see if I could try to get some viral video out there to Gaza about offering them the possibility to be Gandhi, to do the Gandhi part, to free the refugees and get the Hamas leadership to turn themselves over to The Hague, whatever, a long shot, but nonetheless, I figured it was worth a try. But what I found there when I went to the rally is that pretty much there were no Palestinians. There were like 4 Palestinians under the age of 20. Everybody there was just like American students who are they have nothing else to do. And they're looking for a cause. This is a cause. I think to a lot of people in America, what they see, because Jews are so am levad ad yishkon, we end up having a bad rap as standoffish. Jews end up having a bad rap as like and also people think that all Jews are wealthy because, of course, the ones that are famous are wealthy. The ones that are criminal are famous also, So the good Jews, right? All the Hasidim who are doing all this chesed, are doing all this kindness, the world doesn't really know about them. So from the perspective of the world, here you have a bunch of rich, entitled people, I'm saying, people who don't know anything, very low information voters or very low information protesters. From their perspective, they think that Jews are an elite. And I've worn a yarmulke. I don't always wear a yarmulke, but I wore a yarmulke in Abu Dhabi and in Turkey and in Spain and in various countries and places. And I ask people, also like the middle of nowhere in Indian reservations in America, and a lot of people have the impression that a yarmulke is a sign of superiority. In other words, like a lot of people do view Jews as superior because of either biblical, historical, or because of real life things. And they think that it's a sign of showing off. They view it as a sort of balgaiva, as a sort of arrogance. And that's really getting in the way of people seeing Israel accurately, I think, in that people see, they think it's a wealth issue. They think it's an economic issue, which is what Mark Twain happened to have said when he said concerning the Jews that he thinks it's, somewhat economic.
But poor Jews are,
first of all, we have to do.
I mean, poor Jews are hated just as much historically as rich Jews, and I disagree with your assessment. I'd say most of the ultra-Orthodox world's chesed, charity work is largely not. There's definitely exceptions, especially in Israel, but largely directed within their community, which they take very good care of each other. But you should know statistically, and it's very clear that Jews give more of their time and their wealth to non-Jewish causes than anyone else. Any cause to make the world a better place: communism, socialism, feminism, Black civil rights, anti-apartheid, Doctors Without Borders, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. It's all founded by, and run by Jews. So we have Jews for every ism but Judaism. So the notion of Jews, there is this stereotype of Jews being cliquey and elitist, but every group is like that. All the Asians monopolize this and the Indians monopolize that. There's a lot of stereotypes about us for sure. There's no question about us. But the reality is the facts speak for themselves that Jews give more time and more money to things that aren't Jewish to other people than we give to ourselves and our own people, by the way. That's for sure. The vast majority of Jewish donations in the world, I'm talking about 90% plus of money given by Jews to charity is going to non-Jewish causes.
You think so, really?
Of mega gifts for sure. I know so.
Oh,
Mega
mega
gifts for
gift,
sure.
sure, yeah.
Mega gifts for sure. Jews give money locally, but most Jews, the reality is that to the extent that a Jew is connected to Judaism, the more likely to give to Jewish things. The average, Jew is more likely to give money to us, feed the pigeons in Central Park than the UJA if they have no Jewish connection. It's precisely the more you identify as a Jew, you feel responsibility for your brothers and sisters. But again, it's the job of those Jews who are connected religiously to show that the job of being Jewish. But again, I don't believe that most of even the Orthodox Jewish world recognizes that our job is to do Kiddush Hashem. It's to live and act in a way that inspires other people.
Yeah.
Torah and mitzvahs are a means to an end. You don't have a Jewish people without it. You have no Jewish continuity. It's the rocket fuel, the payload, and the guide system of Judaism is Torah and mitzvot. And serving God is a figure of speech that we love to use, but you can't because he's infinite. From Abraham onward, we have one job in this world, which is to reconnect humanity to reality. The ultimate reality is God. And that's the ultimate truth. And we're not supposed to do that by conquering. We're not supposed to do that by converting. Anyone knows about conversion knows we make it very hard to convert properly. It takes years. It's a lot of strife. It's very difficult to do it. It's a big struggle, and you got to prove your commitment. And we don't conquer. I always jokingly say the only Jewish empire in history has been Hollywood, and it wasn't a source of Jewish values. So, but if you do it right, people will follow you. I mean, I'm going to sign off in a minute, but I always have this quote that I use, you have the expression, imitation is the highest form of flattery. It's a quote everyone knows. I always tell people that's the shortest class you ever got on Christianity, Islam, and liberal democracy. If it wasn't for us, even in the worst conditions, without a country, in exile, but just doing it better, having social welfare infrastructure and high rates of literacy, and just projecting a vision of reality and a future and a deterministic worldview based on a loving God that was so far superior to anyone else's, they wouldn't have all followed us. They all copy us. There'd be no Christianity, no Islam, and no liberal democracy with its values, if not for us reconnecting, beginning with Abraham 3,700 years ago, the world to God. And in a world that is so lost, and now, the Will Hilbert is an American Jewish social thinker from the mid-20th century, introduced an idea of the cut flower ethics. He said, cut flowers, you put them in a vase, they look nice for a week, but then because they're severed from their roots, they wither and die. And he's saying this 70 years ago. So too with the values that make up our Western civilization, which are all based on God, value of life, peace, social responsibility, equality before the law. None of that exists in the ancient world. It's the first book I wrote. World Perfect is on that one. So now we got the world to a certain point. We dragged them kicking and screaming. A lot of them resent us for that. Which is what drives anti-Semitism, is a rebellion against that national mission. But now, as we got to a certain point, the world is starting to slide backwards again. And now it's this wake-up call is for us as Jews to come together and be the role model for the world, and to be balanced Jews that are balancing our relationship. The Orthodox world tends to be hyper-focused on the commandments between us and God. How kosher I can eat, how modest I can dress, how much time I can spend learning Torah, and with often at the expense of worrying about fellow Jews and the rest of the human race. And the secular Jewish world has lost the connection with God and is obsessed with fixing the world, tikkun olam. So we need to create a new version of a new balanced Jew who's just careful of what comes out of his mouth is what he puts in his mouth, and to really be Jews who are supposed to express the godliness that we're supposed to have, which is the role model that the world really needs. And when we do that, the world will not only stop attacking us, they'll follow us, they'll support us, and then we get peace for ourselves and for the whole world. And we should have that soon.
Amen.
And with that, I'm gonna wish you a goodbye and good luck.
Very nice speaking with you, Ken.
And we'll speak
right,
again.
So God bless you. God bless your family. And very good talking with you.
Stay safe over there in America. It's a dangerous place.
We manage. Be well.
Okay,
I'll see you in Yerushalayim, B'ezrat Hashem.
God willing. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.